This one belief system, this one thought will absolutely change your life if you make it a priority. A lot of the times we get caught up in all the external things and all the things that we're creating by looking at the things that we've actually accomplished, right? We look at the data, we look at the trophies we've gotten, and we look at the money we've accumulated, and we look at the friends that we have, we look at the connections that we have. We start looking at all the external things that are possible to achieve and to attain, but what you don't realize is that none of those things actually matter, and none of those things actually make a difference in your life. All those things are only achieved after one thing, and that one thing is the internal work that you do within yourself. That is by far the number one thing out there that you can actually put your time in and focus on to create a massive difference. Here's the thing, all the external things that we get out of life, right? Again, from money, relationships, anything that you can possibly think of, those only happen because of the internal work that you've actually done. And it is a big part that a lot of us miss at one point or another. Luckily, some of us eventually figure that out along the way, right? It might take us a year, it might take us 20 years. Some of us get lucky and that information is taught to us at a very early age. And so we get caught up in this hamster wheel. You've probably realized it at one moment or another where you get caught up in this hamster wheel of like, I'm trying to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z is just not happening. Why is this result not happening? And the reason why it's not happening is because you have not done enough of the internal work to actually make it happen. I recall a couple of years ago, one of my key employees, my CEO, was actually like, this is what they told me. They were like, you're putting in so much time and so much effort into all these other things that are actually not part of the business. And so they were like, if you would actually put that effort more into the business, it would actually help us grow quicker. And I was like, you know what? That's a very important thing that you're saying. And thank you for saying that, because to a certain degree, you're right. To a certain degree, the time and energy that you put into something is going to correlate to the result that you actually get from it. But what they were failing to see is that I wasn't trying to just waste my time by doing all these external things, right? I wasn't doing just another thing to do another thing. I knew deep down inside that this work that I was doing separate from the business was helping me work on internal things that were in the future going to eventually help the business for me to lead it to a certain direction that I know that was going to be required to actually accomplish the bigger goal. I could have put in all this time and energy in this moment, right? And I could have probably helped move the needle quicker with whatever was happening in the next 30 to 60 days. But what they couldn't see is that I was thinking longer term. I was thinking bigger. I knew that if I can figure out certain parts of me that were stopping me from taking us to the next level, that would be a lot more important and would be a lot more of a pivotal step for the business than if I would have just spent several extra hours working on the business. And now look, I am not telling you to not work on the business, and I'm not telling you to go out and just do self-development all the time and work on your spirituality and work on getting mentors and coaches. I'm not saying just do that, because you can also get caught up on that hamster wheel. That hamster wheel can also be very deadly, because you will probably hit a moment where you get so caught up on trying to learn the next thing all the time, reading the next book, hiring the next coach, hiring the next mentor, and just getting caught up in that loop and actually not applying anything. We have to find a balance of doing the internal work and mastering that internal self, learning those new skills, but simultaneously applying it. Because if you don't apply it, then nothing's gonna happen. It's pretty much the exact same thing, right? You can keep working on the business, you can keep working on your craft, whatever that craft is, but you eventually get stuck. You eventually hit that wall because there is no other internal source of information or guidance that is leading you to take it to the next level. So then you get to get outside of yourself and look at, okay, what am I completely missing from here? What am I getting so caught up in what's in front of me? And what do I get to work on within myself to actually take it to the next level, and vice versa, right? We can get so caught up in developing all the time that we forget we actually have to work on the business, right? Imagine I hired a coach who was going to train me to become the best basketball player of all time. They taught me all the skills that the best of the best had out there. Imagine I hired Tim Grover, and Tim Grover was coaching me how to become the best basketball player of all time because he's a performance coach, because he's trained Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, but yet I never actually went out and trained. The same thing goes in reverse. You see all these freak athletes all the time. They barely train, they barely do anything, and they usually tend to be one of the best because they are naturally gifted. But when they don't do the internal work, when they don't continue working on themselves, whether that's spiritually, psychologically, mentally, they eventually hit a wall as well. Imagine a life, imagine a world where you are constantly developing yourself, not just physically, not just in the doing, but also mentally and in the internal part. I 1000% believe the person who's working on both will go way further along than somebody who is very, very skillful at the physical, the doing, right? And the doing, I'm referring to doing like anything that anybody is good at. You can be one of the best piano players out there, but if you don't have the mindset as to like what it's actually going to take to become the best, for somebody to actually know, you just are naturally gifted, you're never actually going to do it. It's going to require a certain type of mindset to actually get you there, and that's where the internal work comes in, right? Whether that's spiritual, whether that's with yourself, whether that's reading the Bible, whether that's hiring a coach, whatever the case is, there is a balance. And when I say balance, I don't mean like, you know, you get to take some time off or not work certain moments and like, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything for this week and maybe next week I'll do it. I don't mean that type of balance. I mean a type of balance where you're doing both simultaneously and practicing both at the same time all the time. That's what I mean by balance. But doing that consistently all the time, that is when you'll see the biggest gap from who you are right now to what second place is to you. We get to remind ourselves that all the time. Is like, how can we do that all the time? And so that is something that I am constantly every single day looking at, of like, where am I still, like, what is still in the gap for me? Like, what is still missing? And I also get to be careful with like not getting caught up in that mindset where like I feeling like there's always something else that I need. We get to remember that we always have what it takes. What would it look like? A question I want you guys to sit with. What would it look like to not only relentlessly work on your craft externally and internally? I guarantee you guys it will absolutely change your life.